VI.
It's 18 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good to have your company this Wednesday. Now, tomorrow, workers across Aotearoa are mobilising to defend workers' rights and the public health system. Now, this year's events aim to keep pressure on the government amid growing public opposition to its policies. Co-convener of the Pacifica Network and outgoing Pacific representative on the executive board for the PSA, Ulualofaiga Mareko, joins me now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hey, thank you so much for your time to discuss this talanoa. Before we get into that, though, I just wanted to get a bit of reaction from yourself, and perhaps this plays in to why events like this are happening in the first place. Our Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, yesterday came out swinging, saying basically there will be no lolly scramble and that the government will focus on core services. Did highlight health, although still vague. Of course, we've got to wait till budget day to see the proof in the pudding there. But in terms of, it's obvious that that operating allowance means that our public sector is going to, well, falter as a result. Or what do you make of her comments yesterday?
Yeah, no, I'm hearing what Minister Willis had to say in terms of the budget. Doesn't necessarily mean, it means actually that she doesn't have a realistic view in terms of what's actually happening on the ground for a lot of the public service, where there has been a lot of cutthroat cuts, where the impact there has been to the detriment of the worker, in terms of well-being, in terms of workload pressure, in terms of being able to have certain terms and conditions like flexible working. And so hearing that it is going to be a massive struggle and a potential year of a number of change management proposals because there isn't any more money, definitely this disheartens us as unionists.
Indeed. And look, let's turn our attention now to this upcoming event in terms of May Day. I mean, why would you argue it's more important than ever for people to show up for this? And I suppose what's the risk of staying silent?
So the risk in staying silent is actually that us as workers mean that we don't necessarily care about our current terms of conditions. And that may be so where some of our agencies have some really good terms and conditions, but a lot of our agencies right across public service actually need to have the room to be able to participate in bargaining processes so that we are able to better them. And so coming together tomorrow is throwing your hand up saying, yep, because I agree that we need to do better by our workers, but also by our public health system.
Indeed. And, what does it mean to, quote, fight back together for health in a system that often leaves Pacific, Māori and low-income communities behind, do you think?
Well, I mean, one of the biggest highlights there that probably hasn't necessarily been highlighted well enough is that, yep, so there are impacts to the public health system, and yep, there has been highlights to what the impacts are going to be for our Māori brothers and sisters. But there's also massive impacts to Pacific, where they're actually looking at this establishing the Pacific Health Unit, or minimising the already little voice that Pacific have in the health system. And so having our people turn up to come together as a collective and fight back together will definitely demonstrate that one, we actually care about our health system, but two, that we are wanting to see the improvements needed that we haven't necessarily experienced thus far.
Yeah, and, how are the government's cuts to public services, and this is a big question, but how are the government's cuts to public services showing up in the daily lives of Pacific families and essential workers, in the sense of how is it causing damage?
Well, Michael, obviously, in terms of stats, Pacific is quite highly represented in terms of being on the lower end of pay scales, being on the lower end in terms of being able to gain some sort of career progression, but also learning and development. And so what that means is in terms of being able to put food on the table, in terms of being able to have a roof over your head. The struggles are just a bit more than what others would experience, where we have seen a lot of our people either have almost everybody in their house lose their roles due to different change management proposals that have happened over the last year or so, or they have had to really cut back to the point where our people are either starting to look at other avenues in terms of trying to get finance, or they're looking at possibly moving in with other family members and friends. And I mean, us as a Pacific people definitely take the village approach, but we are bursting at the seams already in terms of housing, and so having these budget cuts continue because it's only worsening the issue.
Yeah. Unions help, obviously, to build our public services and keep them intact or to try and stop them from being dismantled to an extent. I mean, what role must they play now to protect workers, especially for communities who rely on these services? I mean, now more than ever, right? It seems as though unions are important.
Definitely, and I mean, um, a lot of our people usually join unions as an insurance policy, and I mean, we we have sort of changed the approach when it does come to jump to change management processes. They are going to impact a number of Pacific, where we are actually encouraging them and educating them and informing them around the reason why they need to participate in actually voicing out their concerns, because what we have found is that if there isn't necessarily a cultural lens that is placed on some of these change management processes where we're needed, then it's not necessarily taken into account, which then ends up seeing a lot of our people being disestablished, and then they have nowhere else to turn to, and so yeah, we call it, has been a bit of a change in terms of the approach we have been taking as unions, to encourage our people to start participating just a little bit more.
Now, on the flip side of things, looking at unions from perhaps another perspective, why would you say Pacific health workers are still some of the lowest paid in the system, despite being the ones, if I think back to the COVID pandemic and beyond, where we helped to hold it together, and yet we're still lower on the pay scale?
Well, I would have to reflect back on the Pacific Pay Gap inquiry report there that Dr. Sauno Mari'i, who worked for the Human Rights Commissioner and was the EEO Commissioner at the time. So her and her team done a deep dive, where they didn't necessarily just focus on public service, but focused on all industries that impacted Pacific, and what it really highlighted is that actually for our Pacific workers, because there's a few more barriers that we have to try and overcome to enable us to be able to get the pay rises, or actually be paid what it is that we are worth. And I mean, in terms of our Pacific women, they they are the apple of our eye in terms of Pacific culture, but yet they are still the lowest paid, and there's a lack of recognition there in terms of the skill sets that our Pacific women bring, but also the commitment and dedication that our Pacific people bring as well. And so we
Mm.
we try and do things in bargaining in terms of trying to better processes or create clearer avenues and pathways to be able to enable our people to be able to negotiate their pay, to be able to actually have a ladder to climb, to be able to progress their careers. And so
Yeah.
even though it has been a long-standing issue, we are slowly gaining wins in that space to actually enable our people to be able to do that.
I suppose the question that I'm asking at the end of the day is why do so many PSA members say they feel unheard, overworked, and unsupported, despite paying union fees and showing up to events? Or is this more a reflection of the conditions they're working with within government?
Um, So I would say it's a bit of both, because I mean, we call it when it comes to working in an organisation, some of us have the privilege of being able to engage our more senior leadership within our organisations, and are able to, sort of have that side conversation, but aren't necessarily heard in terms of, oh, they came up to me once and said, oh, you're doing a really good job, but then when it comes to actually doing the work, the reflections of our workers aren't necessarily heard. In terms of a union perspective, I mean, it's all about utilizing the avenues that you have available, and I guess it is also having an understanding that you don't necessarily always have to engage a paid official from the union. That is the whole purpose in the delegate structures being created within agencies, so that actually our members have a wider team that they could access, rather than just one person.
Yeah. So here's the final question for you, and I suppose it'd be facetious of me not to ask, but I suppose in the broader scheme of things, what has the PSA delivered for its Pacific members in the past year, beyond, say, what some critics would argue is words and posters?
Well, we call it. What I can say is that the PSA over the last maybe 3 or 4 years has actually had a massive change where they have been able to enable us as Pacific to have specific Pacific positions where we have what is called a Wana delegate at the highest level within the agency, but then we also have a Pacific representative on on each of our 5 sector committees, as well as a Pacific representative on the executive board. And that is because there was a realization after us as Pacific advocating that actually, one, we don't have an avenue. Two, our voices aren't necessarily heard within all levels of the PSA union structure, but also there was a lot of work that our people need done that isn't necessarily being enabled. And so some of the things that we have been able to better in terms of terms and conditions, not just over the last year, but over the last 3 or 4 years since these positions have been created, is we have been able to have better recognition in terms of bereavement leave, and the family structures and the roles and responsibilities that also comes to sick leave and domestic leave provisions. We are also being able to start having clearer pathways in terms of being able to gain career progression, being able to gain learning and development opportunities, but also being able to actually paint a picture that in terms of density and specific representation within organizations there that actually, because our people are still sitting at the bottom of our organizational structures, but also having, little pockets of people as you get higher in the structure. And so the goal for us as Pacific within PSA is that actually when we look back 10 years from now, that actually we are starting to see the change that we weren't hoping for overnight, but are slowly making in small increments.
Love your work. Hey, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. That is Ulualofaiga Mareko. You're listening to Pacific Mornings on 5:31 PI. Time for your weather, traffic and airports update.
5:31 weather.